Do that. Oh, you're in.
The meeting on public safety will come to order. We will begin with a roll call vote to establish quorum. Chairman Hopkins present, Vice Chairman Yancey. Alderman Chico.
Present.
Alderwoman Gutierrez, Alderman Lopez. Alderman Curtis, Alderwoman Tabarez. Alderman Cincho Lopez, Alderwoman Fuentes, Alderman Taliaferro, Alderman Spizzato.
Next Posado's there.
Alderman Vasquez. Alderman Knutson should be stepping in momentarily. Alderman Gardner, Alderman Martin. Alderwoman Minna Hoppenworth. Alderwoman Haddon. And Alderwoman Silverstein. Thank you. We have 9 members present. That does establish a quorum. We do have 2 Rule 59 requests. Actually, Alderman Silverstein was a Rule 59 request. You still want that in case you need to step out? Or you're good? Okay. Rule 59 request for Alderman Gardner. Can I get a motion so authorizing? Moved by Vice Chair Yancey, hearing no objections, so ordered. We have a number of public speakers and we have one item on the agenda today, the Joint Cook County City Task Force to address domestic violence against women. Our first public speaker is Dennis White.
Good morning, everybody. Here's a quick story. Jessica, can everybody hear me? Okay. Jessica Jackson was a victim of a domestic violence case against one of her family member, and nobody have not spoke up and charged the perpetrator of a domestic violence crime. So the question is, when is her justice going to be done here in the city and the county? Now, public safety is supposed to be the safety for the public, not for the criminals. So if women are the victim of domestic violence, then something should have been done immediately. But you got these ridiculous laws like the Safety Act that was passed by J.B. Pritzker, and then Brandon Johnson defunding the police, then it's a recipe disaster for women as well during domestic violence. Now, if they do a task force, then so be it. Do the task force. But the question is, when are the data going to be out for domestic violence? Not only domestic violence, but crime itself. So, if Brandon Johnson say crime is down, which part of crime is down? Is it property crime or violent crime? Because domestic violence is part of violent crime. So not only the police are being defunded, under budget, undermanned and stuff, but it is affecting not only white women, but if I'm not trying to be racial, but that justice will be done very swiftly. But what about the black women here that's in this building and in the city of Chicago? So my recommendation is, if the police, if y'all don't change the laws here, hire more police, then my suggestion is the women need to arm themselves, because that will reduce the domestic violence rate. And that statistically it has worked. So that's the thing about it. So the blood that's being is on the city council hand. Not only that, the blood is on the mayor's hand because he allowed it to happen. First, it started with Lightfoot. Now, the torch is passed to Brandon Johnson. So my suggestion to you all is do some more justice, not only for Jessica Jackson, who been violated through domestic violence, but all women here in the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois. Do some justice and stuff, and have Brandon Johnson to hire more police, so it'll be less domestic violence and less crime throughout the city of Chicago. Thank you.
The next speaker is Linda Ribaldo.
Good morning. I'd like to thank the committee for allowing me to speak today. I am a retired deputy sergeant with the Cook County Sheriff's Office, where I devoted 25 years of service to the residents of Cook County. Thank you. Additionally, I held the position of Chief Deputy Clerk for the Clerk of the Circuit Court in Bridgeview for 2 years. Furthermore, I am a survivor of domestic violence. My 25 years of experience in serving the people of Cook County has provided me with a profound understanding of the processes involved and have illuminated areas that require improvement, not only in the offices where I have worked, but in all facets related to domestic violence within the court system. When tragedy occurs, the instinct is often to assign blame and point fingers. Which office failed? Who overlooked something? These thoughts are counterproductive because the real discussion should center on what went wrong and how we can better support our victims. No single office or agency can address this issue in isolation. It necessitates a collective shift in perspective. This task force is not merely a good idea, it is vital and has the potential to save lives. We must encourage open communication and collaboration. Challenging discussions need to occur. We must carefully examine cases to determine how we have failed the victims. It is essential for all offices in Chicago, Cook County, and law enforcement to come together and engage in these difficult conversations regarding what is failing victims and to enact meaningful changes, policies, procedures, technology used, and potentially even the law. Women, men, and children are losing their lives at the hands of their abusers. I was fortunate enough to escape my abuser without further harm despite his threats to kill me. Others have not been as fortunate. They live in constant fear, always looking over their shoulders. They seek assistance from law enforcement. They enter our courts for help, and they are being let down. The system is not merely broken, it is utterly shattered. It is my hope that this task force is approved so that the people who are passionate about putting in the work that is so desperately needed can begin. Thank you.
Thank you. Please add Alderman Taliaferro to the roll call. The next speaker is Diane Brown.
Good morning to the Honorable Brandon Johnson and our Chicago City Council. My name is Elder Diane Brown. I am in support of creation of Chicago Cook County Task Force to Reduce Violence Against Women, R2025-001-9950. That's being presented today. That will establish an intergovernmental task force that focus on domestic violence and domestic relations court system process that victims and family has endured during their journey, findings resolved in their circumstances. Unfortunately, I am aware of the many broken processes and related resources that has impacted families like my own. My grandson at the age of 8 years old had witnessed a domestic violence dispute over my daughters having to be in the court system 8 to 9 years. And we are still in the court with this case. We must come together and fix this court system. I am a mandated reporter for Chicago Public School. I'm instructed every school year to take 10 to 15 safe school trainings that I must pass to be able to care for my students. On September 8, 2025, Ramika Blackman, shortly after dropping her 6-year-old son at his school in the South Loop area, the father held her and his girlfriend shot Miss Blackman in the face that morning. Miss Blackman that morning had put a handwritten note in her son's lunchbox that read, "Have a great day. I love you." Miss Blackman's mother is now raising her grandson. The shooter and the father has not been arrested. We must fix this system, I beg of you. Once again, I would like to thank the Honorable Brandon Johnson and our Chicago City Council for the Chicago County Task Force. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Sarah Brown.
All right, good morning. My name is Sarah Brown. Thank you to the esteemed members of City Council. I am a domestic violence survivor as well as a domestic relations court system survivor. I stand before you today as a passionate advocate for the creation of an intergovernmental task force inspired by my personal journey through an arduous 9-year court battle for my son and myself. We are coming up on the first anniversary of my son actually witnessing his father beating his girlfriend on Thanksgiving. About 2 days ago, because again, as we are preparing for Thanksgiving, like most of us are, my son is reminded about what happened, right? And so the continuous traumas that he will endure for as long as he can think about it or remember it. Over the past 9 years, I've faced challenges that tested my resolve and highlighted the gaps in our system. Throughout this journey, I witnessed firsthand the impact of policies on families, particularly those who, like mine, felt marginalized and unheard. My son, just 9 years old, is an innocent participant in this struggle. He deserves a supportive environment where his needs are prioritized and his voice is amplified. I beg of this council to not only pass the resolution, but follow it. Hear the constituents in your districts because this is happening. It's happening more and more and more. This task force represents a crucial step towards collaboration among various governmental entities, allowing us to share resources, knowledge, and efforts to better serve families in our community. By working together, we can address the systematic issues and contribute to prolonged court proceedings and create a more efficient and supportive framework for families. Together, we can develop solutions that not only advocate for justice, but also foster understanding, compassion, collaboration among stakeholders. This is not a political decision. I don't care where anyone stands. Just having some real conversation this morning, even before I came up to this mic. This is a conversation we all should be having because it's affecting us all. I urge you to support the resolution for the Intergovernmental Task Force. Let us collectively strive to create a system that not only protects the rights of individuals, but also uplifts the entire community. Thank you for considering the importance of this initiative.
The next speaker is Patricia Puente.
Thank you for having me here. I have a question. The same thing happened to me, but unfortunately, I fight noise ordinance. And the people that I was arguing with, they started harassing me and pushing me. I didn't put up with that. I deserve my respect. I'm an elderly, and not only that, but what I hate about when they start saying, we know politicians in City Hall, we know law enforcement, we could put you in jail, we could put you in a mental institute. That's what I hate, when they don't have the pants enough to not lie. That's the first thing that these two men did. They lied to the law enforcement because they know politicians, they know Angie Guerrero Cuellar, they know Lopez, they know what, Hispanic politicians. Is that what we want? Another Mexico here where the women are abused? No, we don't. And thank God for ICE. The reason too that I'm here is because of the city waters. I was informed that Tijuana is dumping trash to pollute the California waters and whatever. I noticed it and I brought it to Lopez, Alderman Lopez, and this is what he said: nobody's going to help you. He's a man, you know, he's Hispanic. But they're dumping trash, water, and I gave him a picture. I gave Ramirez a picture. trash water. They're intoxicating our water. Why? Because this is what an Hispanic told me. This is not our country. We don't care. But then I said, wait, but what do you mean this is not your country? You're getting benefits. You're getting this. Hey, it's not our problem if the Americans are the dumb ones giving us all these monies. We're going to take it. Are you kidding me? Please, these waters, they're dumping trash. I gave Lopez a picture, Ramirez a picture, and I could give you guys later on a picture of where they're dumping mattresses. They're intoxicating our water on the Orange Line, Midway Station, and God bless the United States of America. Please, let's work together. Thank you.
Next speaker is George Blakemore.
Ms. Carmen, you've been around. You representing the city, the Human Rights Commission. That's where I know your face from. And now you go right on the other side and it's the county. And you're all gonna have a task force. I was brought up down south. And these women would fight these men. Go lie on them. And they also had family support. These brothers would beat them. And if the girl got pregnant, sometimes they had shotgun weddings. A family affair, have you ever thought about that? Do you have an uncle? Do you have a brother? Do you have a man in your life? I love Facebook, but I'm getting too old for dealing with Facebook. Somebody called in and say, Mr. Blakemore, my husband beat me up 3 times and sent me to the county. And she went back. It was something wrong with her. What? It was something wrong with her. She had a mental problem. Maybe some of these women have mental problems and they don't have support from family. Have you ever thought about that task force can help you? Your brother, your uncle, your nephew, some strong male in your life? I'm going to be very brief. I'm gonna be very brief. This lady went to her father-in-law, and she told her father-in-law, "Your son, every time he get his check on Friday, he go out and spend it." The father, her father-in-law, the father went to his son and beat him. Beat him, so you better carry that money home to your wife. So I'm making it very simple. It's a mental problem. That woman kept going right back to that man. It's a family affair. Try that. Try, and women down there was the song Frankie Johnny was sweet on. What did Frankie do to him? He was doing her wrong. She shot him 3 or 4 times. She killed him. So you women got to be super ladies. And no task force, no police can. You got to be a super mother, a super lady. And that task force is not the answer. You are the answer, women. Don't teach this MF how to treat you if you don't know how. Show him better than you can tell him. Now, this is why Mr. Blakemore is giving you facts of life. Thank you.
Please add Alderman Vasquez to the quorum roll call. The next speaker is Carmen Navarro Garcion. Where?
Good morning and thank you.
Oh.
For 30 years, I have dedicated my life to public service. Over 25 of those years have been spent working directly with survivors of domestic violence, bearing witness to courage, resilience, and heartbreaking loss. I stand here today not just as a supporter, but as someone who has literally held victims in her arms. Their tears a testament to the failure of the very systems designed to protect them. The trauma survivors experience is profound, but what often breaks them is the confusing, hostile obstacle course we force them to run just to achieve safety. The frustration begins the moment they call for help. Victims struggle to understand local law enforcement's role when officers respond to a call. When they finally find the courage to go to court for an order of protection, we hand them a daunting 30-page packet. And even after navigating that bureaucratic nightmare, they are forced to return over and over again because the order was never properly served on their abuser. The emotional and financial toll is immense. Many victims share children with their abusers. They are often trapped without the fundamental resources, housing, counseling, therapy, or financial support to keep themselves and their children safe as they flee. And we must also recognize the unique, profound fear felt by our immigrant neighbors. A las mujeres inmigrantes que nos escuchan hoy, quiero que sepan que vemos su lucha. El clima actual las ha paralizado con el miedo, un miedo que las mantiene atrapadas en casa con su abusador, temiendo llamar a la policía o acercarse a la corte. Su miedo es tan grande que incluso tienen miedo de enviar a sus hijos a la escuela, poniendo a sus familias en un peligro aún mayor. Su silencio no es por falta de coraje, sino por la barrera del sistema que deben enfrentar. Hoy luchamos también por ustedes. In just the last year, I have met with dozens of survivors who have struggled to make sense of the system that failed them. Some have seen their children used as a tool for continued torment. Others have endured the ultimate unthinkable tragedy. They have had their children murdered by their abusers. They have lost siblings, family, and stability. I'm here to speak on behalf of the victims who could not make it here today, whose lives are too unstable or whose voices are too strained by grief to testify. They have a fragile, hard-won faith that you, their leaders, want to keep them safe and hold their abusers accountable. They have hope that although this system has caused them a tremendous amount of loss and pain, you will support this resolution. Support it so that we can close this dangerous information gap. Support it so that law enforcement can act with the information they need the moment they arrive. Support it so that no other family has to suffer simply because our justice and safety systems refuse.
Thank you for your powerful testimony. That concludes our pre-registered speakers. Are there any other domestic violence survivors here that did wish to testify who are unable to pre-register? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed to the business of the committee. Please add Alderman Knudsen to the attendance roll call for purposes of quorum. The first item on the agenda is approval of the Rule 45 reports. We have two Rule 45 reports, one from the month of July, one from the month of September. Do we have a motion to approve both reports? Moved by Alderman Vasquez. Hearing no objections, so ordered. Next, we do have a substitute resolution before us for Resolution 19950. Alderwoman Tabares will present the substitute and then submit the appropriate motion. Alderwoman?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chairman Hopkins and members of the committee. The substitute, we worked with the administration. It just cleans up some language. And I ask for members of the committee for their vote to accept.
Okay. Alderwoman Tabares moves to substitute. Hearing no objections, so ordered. Here to present the substance of the substitute resolution creating the task force is Katie Dunn. Ms. Dunn?
Hi, thank you, Chairman. I think we might be having some technical issues, so hopefully everybody has their packet in front of them. So just to begin, my name is Katie Dunn. Oh, there's my brother. I don't know why any idea? It's my background, but the thing's not coming up. Yeah. Well, we'll just stick with the plan. Just to begin, thank you, Chairman Hopkins. Thank you to all the survivors that spoke today. And truly thank you to Alderman Tabares for leading this issue. Alderman Tabares and I met about 1.5 years ago, and she has been trailblazing behind the scenes and trying to help us fix this system. This is a culmination of a lot of different conversations, off the record conversations with city and county leaders and state leaders, and then also with dozens of victims and survivors. Just for this conversation, survivors is the term that's used mostly in this sphere, but a lot of people do not feel like they have survived the system that we spoke to. So we're going to use both terminology. I also want to thank Rocio, Jack, and Ro from Alderman Tabarros's office for all their patience and help as well. There's 46 aldermen who have signed on, so thank you for some of you who've already signed on for your support. And then also we have county partners, Commissioner Miller, Degnan, Gaynor, and Anaya, who have been working on the county side on this issue. So we just want to thank everybody for their efforts. We're here to propose the resolution for the City of Chicago Cook County Violence Against Women Task Force. In our jurisdictions, the lack of data sharing and collaboration between government agencies and the laws and policies that actually prevent these partnerships have impeded efforts to reduce violent crime and protect victims of violence. The City of Chicago Cook County Violence Against Women Task Force will formulate a comprehensive whole-of-government approach to address the public safety crisis impacting all of our communities. So just to give a little bit of a glimpse of some of the data, in the City of Chicago, as of this morning, homicides and domestic cases are up 27%, and fatal shootings and domestic cases are up 47%. This is after a record-breaking year in 2024 and also in 2023. All 50 wards have experienced domestic-related violent crimes this year. The Office of the Inspector General of Chicago reports that as of the end of October, there were over 104,000 domestic-related calls to 911. And that is 26%, or 1 in 4 of all priority level 1 calls. That is an average of 335 domestic-related priority level 1 calls per day in the City of Chicago. Per capita, the state of Illinois has a higher domestic murder rate than the states of New York and California combined. Similarly, the City of Chicago has a higher per capita murder rate than Los Angeles County and New York City combined. So these are just some of the snapshots. The first picture looks somewhat like a kindergartner picture. Sadly, these dots represent violent crime victimizations, and it should show that pretty much it covers every single block of the City of Chicago. The second part of this is a graph that breaks down the race and ethnicity by fatal and non-fatal shooting. As you could see, 74% of victims are African American, and just about 17% are Hispanic and Latino. So we know that this disproportionately impacts communities, minority communities. The third snapshot, and this is really important, it looks like this. And just to explain it, it shows the fatal, non-fatal shootings by time of day in domestic cases. So as you could see, pretty much from 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. are where the majority of fatal and non-fatal shootings occur. This just to give you a little bit of a background on what that means, it truly means that the first responders of the City of Chicago are the front lines in about 2 out of the 3 shifts a day. There are a lot of amazing providers in the community, some that are 24/7, but for the most part, some of these really horrific incidents happen in the middle of the night, most notably at 2 a.m. So the 3 main mission statements of the Violence Against Women Task Force is to reduce violent crime, and truly all violent crime, because once we fix this system and start these data sharing agreements and these collaborations, amend these legislative items that are precluding partnerships at the time, all violent crimes will actually be impacted in a really positive way. The second priority is to improve first responder safety and wellness. We've seen multiple tragedies, line of duties, and also severe injuries when first responders of Chicago are responding to domestic calls. In addition, overall wellness. These are calls that really take a deep impact on people. We work a lot with first responders, and this is something that comes up time and time again in terms of mental wellness. And third is to create a unified united system that protects women, children, and all vulnerable community members. Primary focus areas, transparency and accountability. Unlike the city of Chicago, transparency is still an issue on the Cook County side. The entire court systems are not subject to FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act. And so some of the largest pretrial and probationary programs in the country, juvenile programs, are not subject to any form of transparency. So that's something that we definitely need to fix if we want to build accountability and also just trust in these systems. Data sharing and record access. Most domestic related cases fall in civil court. So orders of protection are civil court matters. Domestic relations case, parentage, custody cases where a lot of victims, unfortunately, when, as Carmen mentioned, share children with their abusers, their cases are on the domestic civil side. Currently, the Chicago Police Department, the City of Chicago, and all local jurisdictions do not have access to the civil court system. And that's by a law that obviously needs to be amended. So what does that mean? That means when a Chicago police officer may run into somebody and an order of protection pops into their law enforcement database, they have none of the information. They don't know that the victim described mental illness or firearms or any of the background. Also in investigations, and this seems to really kind of blow people's mind, but the Chicago Police Department does not have access to all the orders of protection that have been filed. So for missing women, for injured women, and I'm saying women because that's the lion's share of all victimizations, is the Chicago Police Department by law cannot have access to the full case files. So by fixing the data sharing and the record access will not only improve safety throughout our communities, but also the ability to close cases and properly help victims of crime. Community relations and trust building. The trust is completely broken down with communities across Cook County. Everyone we talk to has had a terrible incident, either on the county or the city side. By fixing the system, we're hoping to rebuild that trust. So there's a few key deliverables. And then truly the goals are to improve the rate of service. Right now, if someone goes in and gets an order of protection, much more often than not, it's never served, which pretty much means that it's useless in terms of enforcing any of the remedies that the judge ordered. The Chicago Police Department, only supervisors right now can serve orders of protection. There's very limited information and training. There's illegal firearms across the city of Chicago. We know that, but there is also over about 80,000 illegal FOIA cards from domestic cases that have never been surrendered and where there's never been a law enforcement response. So one of the things we want to do is improve firearm violence and increase firearm retrievals in illegal FOIA card cases. I've already mentioned the legislative agenda. We also need a data sharing strategy to remove barriers and provide transparency to the public. One of those ways is what we've discussed is a data dashboard, similar to the violence reduction dashboard, to provide accountability, assist with grant acquisition to community partners, and rebuild community trust. The timeline is to begin as soon as possible. There's a sense of urgency. We'd like to begin in December of 2025, so next month, and that will be a monthly executive leadership meeting with county and city leaders of all the departments, and then separate City of Chicago and Cook County working groups. Throughout this process, we'll be drafting a violence against women report, which will be presented in July in a public forum in both the City Council and the Cook County Board of Commissioners. I have a message from, many of you may remember the case of Jaden Perkins, the 11-year-old boy from Chicago who was murdered last year while trying to protect his mother. Jaden's case is a perfect example of the system breaking down, sadly, in every single component on the city, the county, and the state. Every single checks and balances went wrong in that case. His mother is part of our group. We have a group of survivors that have been working with us and will continue to provide input. But today she has a special message for all of you. So I'll conclude with a message from Latiria Smith. I thought I was doing everything right to protect myself and my family. I cried out multiple times to law enforcement to try and help. I was denied an order of protection. I was offered no help at the courthouse, and I left feeling helpless. I was not notified when my abuser was up for parole or when he was released. I had begged them to keep a violent man from hurting my family. The system failed. My son was murdered in his own home, where he was supposed to feel safe, trying to protect me. As Jaden's mother, I will use my voice, not only for my son, but for other families going through the system. It should not take another life to be lost for something to be done. I'm asking leaders to vote for this task force and to work together to fix this broken system. With that, I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn. Please add Alderwoman Fuentes and Alderman Curtis to the attendance roll call for purposes of quorum. Alderwoman Tabarez.
Thank you, Chairman Hopkins and members of the committee. I want to thank Katie Dunn for presenting your presentation today. Thank you for all of your hard work. And I also want to thank the speakers who are here today who gave public comment: Carmen Navarro-Chacon, Sarah Brown, Diane Brown. We also have Linda Ribaldo, who came in today to give public comment. I want to just briefly say that, as you've heard this morning, we are experiencing a crisis, and it's our responsibility as legislators and leaders in government to ensure that our systems are working in the best interests of the residents. This task force is about government fixing government, working to ensure systemic failures are not costing lives, but saving them. I want to note that as overall crime in our city trends downward, domestic violence stands out as a deepening crisis. Against the broader decline in homicides, the number of domestic-related killings continues to rise year after year, claiming mothers, daughters, sisters, and partners in homes that should be places of safety. These are not random acts of violence. They are preventable tragedies that follow patterns we already know too well. What stands between too many victims and real protection is not a lack of laws, but a broken bureaucratic maze that confuses, delays, and ultimately fails the people who need help the most. A survivor calling 911 needs more than a police report. She needs an order of protection, served quickly, a court date that actually happens, a prosecutor who follows through, and enforcement that keeps the abuser away. Right now, that chain breaks far too often. Paperwork gets lost between agencies. Court backlogs stretch for months. High-risk offenders are released without adequate monitoring, and victims are left to navigate a dozen different departments alone. Every delay, every handoff, every outdated form is another chance for a dangerous person to strike again. This task force seeks to change that. By bringing together every city department with a role to play, we will map every step a survivor takes, find where the system fails her, and fix it. We will review how order of protections are issued and served, analyze timelines for prosecutions, and look to how we can share data in real time across agencies to make sure no victim falls through the cracks because one office didn't talk to another. I'm proud to announce that the Cook County Board of Commissioners is scheduled to pass a sister resolution at their very next meeting, formally committing Cook County government to full participation. This is not just a city initiative. It is a true city-county partnership, locking arms so that no survivor is bounced between jurisdictions while her abuser walks free. You've heard directly from the experts today, as well as survivors and family of survivors, regarding the task force clear need and its mission. Because when the process works, lives are saved. When it doesn't, we read another name in the paper the next morning. This is about accountability for offenders who believe they can hurt the people closest to them without consequence, and for a government that has promised protection but too often delivers paperwork instead. I urge the committee to pass this resolution and create the task force today. With Cook County standing shoulder to shoulder with us and with the exports, you are about to hear from Lighting the Path Forward. We have a once-in-generation chance to build a system that finally puts victims first and delivers the safety and justice our residents deserve. Passing this resolution today is not just another vote. It is the first real step toward fixing the maze that fails victims when they need us most. With Cook County passing their sister resolution, every agency will have the opportunity to be at the same table, held to the same timeline, and accountable for the same results. We cannot wait another year, another month, or for another headline. I ask the members of this committee for their yes vote. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alderwoman Tabares. There's little doubt that the systemic reforms that will be the ultimate work product of this joint task force, if implemented, will save lives. That's the importance of the work we're doing today. So thank you for bringing it to us. Are there any questions for Ms. Dunn from the committee? Alderman Curtis.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to make a statement. I want to thank my colleague, Alderman Tabares, for bringing this forward. I think this is very important because I also have in my community a domestic violence committee, and I would love to get them even involved with this task force. For so many times, we've seen on the news all over, not just Chicago, Cook County, but all over the state of Illinois, where you know, like she said, it hits the headlines, and by that time it's too late when the offender is already on paper for the exact same thing. I've seen this committee that was formed in my community. They meet, they talk to schools, they have meetings at our park district. The problem is that there's a lot of women that are afraid to even come to the meetings. They're afraid to come to the meetings. I don't know how serious Illinois leaders take this, but I know one issue that they definitely have is trying to raise money for awareness, or to help protect someone, or to keep someone safe. They've applied for grants, and if that failed, so we try to do all we can. But again, I think that once it gets to the courts, they need to do a little bit more. So I'm standing in support of this resolution. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman Curtis. Please add Alderman Cincho Lopez to the attendance roll call for purposes of quorum. That brings us to 15 members, almost a full committee hearing. So let the record reflect that a little lake effect snow does not stop this committee, and Chicagoans show up where they're supposed to be. Alderman Vasquez.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, thank you. Actually, much appreciated. Thank you for the work that you're doing. And looking at kind of the packet, I try not to think about it a lot, but Jaden Perkins and Lataria Smith were 40th Ward neighbors, lived about 2 blocks away from me. There's a reason why women are afraid to go places, because they don't feel like there's enough protections in place when they do. In this particular instance, we had gotten the word and done a little bit of the homework, and found out that some of the judges aren't taking the orders of protection seriously. That because their experience might not be one where they've been victims of domestic violence, they don't necessarily understand really how dangerous it can be to not take it seriously and dismiss it. And so I'm appreciative of the task force. I think in our own office, my chief of staff, Kat Sharp, had to push us to make sure that we were holding the judge to account, and actually had to move him from domestic violence over to traffic court, because the judges sometimes come into domestic violence first, which is horrifying to think about because of the level of experience one would need to really be a judge in those scenarios. And so my first question was related to that, right? The task force is going to look at a lot of different things. How do you all look as far as the judicial system itself and how that works out? Because I just don't believe it makes any sense to have a judge start in domestic violence, and just wanted to get your thoughts on it.
Thank you for that question. So last summer, we held a hearing on the county side, mostly focused on domestic relations court, which is where Sarah's cases and the majority of victims, their cases get transferred because they have children with their abuser. So you come into domestic violence court, you might get an order of protection. If you have any kind of parentage case, divorce case, your case gets sent to domestic relations and all services get cut off. So we were bringing this forth to the commissioners last summer, and I'll just be honest, because the judges are state employees, we've been hitting a brick wall. And so the other issues, what I mentioned is the courts are not subject to the Freedom of Information Act. So we get a lot of whistleblowers that call us about cases. And we have to rely on the input of survivors to tell us what happened. We can't even access, there's no court recorders, there's no court reporters, reporters. So the entire system on the county side is really set up to protect the judges and not the victims that are walking in. And so we have a lot of work to do on the county side. There's a new chief judge that's starting December 1st, and we've been in discussions with him. He seems to have a very, very big reform agenda. So we're going to be working hand in glove with him on that issue. Judges should not be starting in domestic violence court.
It's crazy that you even have to say that as a sentence. I just want to say that.
Well, and you know, just in the era of transparency, if you say judges need training, then you know there's you have a lot of roadblocks to that, and everyone else in the system gets training. So that's one of the asks that we have on the county side, is to look at building a judicial training that really looks at the system start to finish. But also, you have all of these suburban courthouses and courthouses where a victim can come in a later court call. So they don't necessarily have to go to domestic violence court. So really, it has to be system wide where every judge gets that, because any judge could be assigned to that later court call. And what we're seeing is those later court calls are the court calls that have the most issues.
Yeah.
Where the orders are not enforceable, they can't go in leads, they're missing information, because no one has the adequate training to handle those cases. So it's going to be a heavy lift on the county side, and we would love your help.
Yeah, you have it. What would be great would be two things. You mentioned that the judges being state employees, there's a state, you've got work that needs to be done there. I think through the chair letting us know what that work looks like, so we're talking to our state partners, would be absolutely helpful to us. Yeah, you mentioned it this time and before about the courts not being able to be FOIA'd. Is that exclusive to Cook County? Is it something you're seeing different compared to other ones? What does right look like, and how far away are we from it?
So the Freedom of Information Act, there was a carve out for the courts when that bill passed, or when that law passed. Because at the time, the pushback was the courts were still paper-based and it'd be too cumbersome to answer FOIA requests. That is no longer the case. So that does not stand up anymore. And in addition to the courts, the Office of the Chief Judge is over the entire juvenile justice system. The Office of Probation that has 20,000+ participants, pretrial now, where most people are released pretrial. They oversee the pretrial services, and also now the GPS program, the electronic monitoring program, specifically the domestic violence GPS program. None of that is subject to FOIA. So when you're trying to build a case or dissect a case, it's really difficult, especially for members of the media. And that's why you'll see woman found dead. You'll never see that she had filed an order of protection. You'll never see that she had 7 orders of protection. They can FOIA the city of Chicago and get 911 calls, and you know, your government is so transparent. On the county side, you won't get that. Even the police officer assigned to that murder case cannot get that information. So we really would love your help. And that's going to be a big effort in January, hopefully.
I appreciate you saying. I'll modify that statement. We have a lot more transparency to go here in the city of Chicago. We may be doing better than Cook County, but We got some
Yeah,
work here as
business,
well.
Yes.
No, but I do appreciate that. I think similarly, letting us know kind of how to talk to our county partners about what changes to be made. I also am optimistic that with Chief Judge Beach coming in, that there's an opportunity to really emphasize the priority of that kind of transparency, as well as making sure victims of domestic violence get the support they need, as well as our juvenile system. I think often we don't identify as victims of domestic violence. We think we grow up certain ways, and that's the way you're supposed to grow up. And I think having the kind of support systems in place that allow victims to feel comfortable enough to tell their story is important, and letting them know that they're protected. And so anything that we can do at the city level as partners, as Chicagoans, as neighbors, we're more than willing to do, and look forward to helping out. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
Alderwoman Silverstein, followed by Alderwoman Fuentes.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to say thank you to my colleague Alderman Tabares for bringing this to us. This is such an important issue, and you have my 100 plus support on this. This is so, so crucial. But I also just wanted to give a thanks to the wonderful women who came here today to testify. It was clear that that was very difficult for you. And I just want to say thank you for your courage and your bravery. Thank you.
Alderwoman Fuentes.
Thank you, Chairman. I also want to commend Alderperson Tabares for bringing this to the body. If I'm not already a signed sponsor, I would like to be added. Look, my little sister is a survivor of domestic violence, and the system failed her many times. In many instances, she was told if she would just behave, maybe he wouldn't be so mad. Or can't she go home and agree with the father of her child so that this wouldn't be another case stacked up in the court that a judge has to deal with? And because of those interactions, and I wouldn't call them mistakes, it's quite criminal what some of these folks are doing to women and men in this process. It could have cost her her life. And I think that we need to take very seriously what it means to protect individuals from domestic violence. I think we need to take very seriously holding folks accountable who sit on a bench who do not take this seriously. And there needs to be some serious system changes in order to protect individuals in our communities. I also want us to understand that we have to double down in investing in resources so that people are protected and that they feel safe in reporting. There are many instances where my sister and many other relatives just would not report because they did not feel safe. If they would report, that there wouldn't be retaliation and that they could be protected from that retaliation. And so this is also personal for me, and I stand firm in my commitment, not just to support the task force, but every other investment that's needed so that we don't have to bury loved ones at the fault of a broken system.
Thank you.
Alderman Lopez.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, members of the committee. Good morning to all of our guests and to all of those who spoke today. I too join my colleagues in thanking Alderman Tabares for bringing this to our attention. Sadly, the Southwest side has had some of the most tragic instances of domestic violence. We saw where Adriana Lopez was gunned down by her boyfriend while having an order of protection. We've seen where we've had to push and fight with legislators to sign Karina's Law, which basically says that if you are involved in domestic violence and have a FOID card, your FOID card should be revoked. That should not be something that we have to fight to do. And personally, to the speakers, to the survivors here and to the survivors listening, my mother was a victim of domestic violence. Every time we have these conversations, it's always very difficult because, as you know, once you start talking about what you live with, you start remembering everything that you lived with and all of its horribleness. And it's easy to always overlook the fact that when you are in that situation, you have almost zero options that you're dealing with. To think that you could just call the police and expect some resolution never quite happens. We've now exposed with the need for this task force for judicial reform and county reform, which I think is absolutely crucial. And I hope that as we continue forward with this effort, that we also look at the not-for-profit help and support network that may or may not exist in communities. Because part of the reason my mother was in a abusive relationship and didn't leave is because she had nowhere to go. And where she was sent was not culturally relevant to where she needed to get help. So she stayed with someone who was abusive. She stayed with someone who was mentally ill. She stayed with somebody who was bad. And I have to pause so that I don't use bad other words that I'll get poked for later. But I know exactly what that's like, as I'm sure all of you do as well. So I think our mission is to make sure that we have all of our colleagues join on, that we push forward. And I think that politically too, we can't be afraid to use what we have available to us to get people to understand how serious this is. And I'll say this quite plainly, to those individuals who suffer from robitis, who think that that black gown somehow makes them holier than thou and that they know everything better than the rest of us. Every election, we decide whether we keep them or not. And I say to hell with them. Start voting no. When they want to be retained, say no. Because the moment they realize that their job's on the line, then they're going to start paying attention to the women who are being abused, neglected, and are falling through the cracks of a multi-billion-dollar system that should be protecting them. This is just step one of a longer journey, and I'm glad all of you are here and have never given up on bringing this to this point, not allowing any to dilute or change our vision for what this was meant to be, because domestic violence and the assault on women must come to an end. Thank you.
Alderman Chico.
Thank you, Chair. And I too want to thank Alderwoman Tabares for her leadership in this issue. As a Chicago police officer who has been on the scene of hundreds of domestic violence incidents, I think the most difficult thing for me and some of my colleagues on the police department was going to the same house over and over and over again and getting that call to that address where we knew what the issue was. And then going there and speaking to the victim, knowing that she felt trapped and in a place where she couldn't go anywhere. So I look forward to this task force. I look forward to the resources that will be put into this because it's much needed. Somebody who saw it on a day-to-day basis, a domestic violence call is one of the most dangerous calls you could possibly get as a police officer. And to see us giving this attention, I appreciate it, and I look forward to everything that will come from this work. Thank you.
Alderwoman Minna Hoppenworth.
Thank you, Chair. I also want to commend Alderwoman Tabares for this work. It's very important work. Jaden Perkins was a student in the 48th Ward at Pierce and also at Gus Dance School. And so I love these pictures that you shared in your presentation, and I hate that you had to share these pictures of Jaden in your presentation. I also hate that we have to create a task force that is survivor-led because we are asking people to tell their stories over and over again. And so I just want to ensure that this is going to be successful, and And I'm here if you need anything. I thank you for Alder Chico for sharing stories about serial abusers. And this is really what we need to do. We need to end the madness and to fix the system. And I think of Lateria and how she was denied an order of protection. She did everything right. And that's what I just can't get over about that story and so many others. So I'm really grateful. I had one question because I have a ward that's very diverse, including LGBTQ plus community and many transgender women. And so I just want to understand if this is going to be exclusive or how inclusive is this work that you're going to do moving forward?
I'm not sure if this is on, sorry. Can you hear me? We're including everybody. Like I said, explained, it's a really complicated issue when you're trying to say violence against women, because 90+% of the cases are women, so sometimes there's a lot of terminology that quite frankly confuses the people that we're trying to serve. So this is inclusive of everybody. We included vulnerable communities. There's been other task force for different like specific groups. We're considering all of those findings, both previous and concurrent task forces. We found some good ideas from a task force from 12 years ago. So we're really going through a deep dive into all of that, but this will be inclusive of all communities.
Thank you. And to be clear, trans women are women. So I
Yes.
just want that to be understood as well in any.
Yeah, no, we have some survivors that are trans women that have been part of this process. So we're just like I said, this is survivor led. And so we've tried to talk to as many people as possible. And so we consider, it says violence against women. I think in the resolution, it also says vulnerable communities.
Thank you. And the other thing about the death of Jaden Perkins and the stories that Lateria brought forward, and also what Alder Vasquez brings up is that there's a lack of training in the judicial system, which is just wild to me. We as employees of the city have to go through that kind of training.
Sure.
And so it's a bit shameful that we've come to this point, but I'm glad that we're moving forward to fix it. So thank you for your work.
Yes, and just to be clear, because I'll probably get a text or two about this, there's judges that are begging for training. So it's hard to get it implemented through the state and through all the processes and protocols, but most judges would prefer to receive this training. And so we're looking forward to working with them to do that.
Thank you. And then I have one more question. We're working with the state and the county in partnership, but was there talk about incorporating county and city? Are you going to be working with the state as well?
So we have state partners that are going to be joining us. Just to get this resolution through the state would have slowed us down. So we have some honorary members, some honorary legislators. The Secretary of State we've discussed, because one of the major issues with orders of protection is if the birth date is wrong, then it can't be inputted, which basically makes it obsolete. So the Secretary of State has agreed to help us with birth dates and trying to remedy that issue. The Illinois State Police oversee the LEAD system, which is the law enforcement database, where all orders of protection theoretically should be entered into, so they can be enforced. So the state police is going to be invited, parole will be invited, and any other state partners that make sense. But probably the most specific concern is the legislative issues that are pretty pervasive throughout different pieces of legislation that preclude partnerships and communication and collaboration. So probably priority number one is legislative partners, and then getting through to the different state agencies.
Thank you. And then I guess one more question. Do you have plans to create, you talked about transparency. Do you have plans to create a public website or dashboard or something that you can show your work on the kind of data that you're collecting to move us forward?
Yeah, so the report will be introduced with both the city council and the Cook County Board of Commissioners next July. But also one of the priorities that as mentioned is a public facing dashboard. Because one of the issues, and Alderman Curtis mentioned, when people apply for grants, they're not successful. One of the main issues we're seeing is that there's no information to even input into a grant. So if you're a local partner and you want to say how many orders of protection are entered every day in Cook County, that information is not available. If you want to know how many women are killed in Cook County, that information is not available. So trying to get inputs from all of the different agencies into one dashboard not only will help lift up the social service net, but also provide a level of accountability. How many orders are entered? How many are served? Why are they not being served? We could start dissecting the system with more transparency, but definitely public facing dashboard is one of the outputs.
Is there another city that's doing this work already?
We are far behind most of the other cities, which is why the data is just horrendous in Chicago.
Is there a
New York has a great model. LA has a collaborative, and then smaller jurisdictions, even Milwaukee has done a lot of reforms over the last decade. So we've been in touch with all three jurisdictions. But Cook County and the city of Chicago we're unique in how it's structured. New York is very different from us, where the courts fall more under some jurisdiction of the mayor's office. So we really need what the whole point of this is to get everybody in a room and figure it out. They might not all report to the same entity, but everybody has different statutory responsibilities. Yet unlike I worked on criminal justice reform forever, you're under a criminal justice system. There's no system or there's no umbrella that's bringing everybody together. Everybody just is kind of off doing their own thing and having in their own silos. And that's why we, quite frankly, are just so far behind our other jurisdictions and our sister jurisdictions of New York and LA.
Again, thank you. Thank you for your work. That's really it. We need to come together, and if people are working in silos, they're probably doing the best that they can, but not seeing what one another are doing. So again, thank you to the survivors who spoke today and all those that are going to move us forward in the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Curtis, followed by Vice Chairman Yancey to close.
Thanks. Okay, got it. As everyone was talking about, what's coming to mind was wraparound services, like the children of the surviving victims. Is there a plan? Could you talk a little bit about that? What's the plan for juvenile victims that has no choice but to fall to be a victim? Because a lot of times that child will jump up to protect their mom, and of course the offender will react. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So the mayor also has a gender-based violence task force that has a lot of the providers, the community providers, and they have a specific kind of a focus area. What we're looking at is government fixing government. And so one of the things we have talked about is that's why everybody is included, including Chicago Public Schools. There's been some intimate partner violence as young as 15, where some students have been killed by their boyfriend or girlfriend in CPS in the last year. So we know that we need to not only address domestic violence that they're seeing in their homes, but also that stop them from starting to perpetrate it in high school. So CPS will be part of this. And actually your former colleague, Alderman Sue Solowski Garza, actually has a curriculum that she used to do in CPS. And so we have her engaged. She's part of our process, and we're trying to figure out what is actually happening in CPS. And then also the Chicago Park District and all of these different government points of contact with youth are really important to this. Not just to protect the children, because we've heard anecdotally there was a few kids picked up by someone that was not supposed to have them per an order of protection last summer at youth camps. So it's not just to protect the children, but also to see what they're doing analyzing their policies, their protocols, but also what they can be doing more of. Because every point of contact is really important in government, to get people as much information and care as they can possibly receive.
I also saw cases where, as you talk about perpetrating, sometimes it's a learned from the environment that they came from, and the John Wayne Gacy, everything, as someone tried to, um, as you get counseling and things like that, they go back way back to their childhoods and what they saw. So that was important also to me. Thanks. Thank you, Chairman.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. I am thankful for Alderwoman Tabares, our presenters today, and more importantly, the women who spoke today who are survivors of domestic violence. There's been some revelational information shared in this short period of time, particularly about how the courts seem complicit in supporting abusers, which is highly problematic. And when I represent a ward that is mostly African American, and when I look at the stats with shootings, right, you're twice as likely to be a victim of a fatal or non-fatal shooting. And I can imagine the numbers are going to look very, very similar as we look at women who are impacted by this. And so, I'm just grateful for this opportunity to be able to sign on in support of this resolution. And I hope that we find ourselves having a very different conversation in July of 2026 as we look at remedies to support all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. And thank you, Ms. Dunn. Hearing no further questions, Alderwoman Tabares moves a due pass for Resolution 19950 as substituted. Hearing no objections, so ordered. The due pass recommendation will be reported out to the next City Council meeting on Friday, November 14th, 2015. There being no further business before the committee, can I have a motion to adjourn by the same roll call vote that was applied to determine quorum? Alderman Spizzato so moves. Hearing no objections, so ordered. The committee stands adjourned. Thank you.